Awesome. All right. Getting started, our next session is an executive conversation I've been looking forward to a lot. I think John and I spent a lot of time just kind of chatting back and forth about some of the things that we're going to go over today. John Cheney is the CEO and co-founder of Enera Power Group, where he's leading the development of 120 megawatts of solar in ERCOT territory and a portfolio of 24 solar business parks for industrial customers. John brings 25 years in renewable energy. He co-founded Silverado Power, which developed 400 megawatts of distributed solar PV and closed $980 million in financing for a 1.3 gigawatt pipeline. Before that, at MMA Renewable Ventures, he scaled sales from 10 million to 250 million in 18 months. So when John talks about building reliable, financeable, profitable, renewable businesses, he's done it multiple times. What I find compelling about John's work at Enera is that he's using compliance and reliability data not just as a have to complete or a cost center to the business, but as a real profitability lever. His solar projects are a case study in how operational tactics and discipline and business performance actually reinforce each other. Over the next 30 to 45 minutes, John and I are going to dig into how he thinks about reliability as a competitive advantage, what he wishes he'd known earlier, and where he sees the biggest opportunities for our operations in the next few years. John, welcome.
Hey, Adam, thank you very much. And it was a great last panel. So I've enjoyed the whole session here. Great to see you.
Well, thank you so much. Anything you want to add to that intro?
No, it was accolades. Enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Well, if you
No, thank you very much. It's a very generous intro, and there's a lot of other things, but we can talk about that as we go, maybe.
Great.
Yeah,
Well, if you're feeling sufficiently confident after that, I'd love to get your kind of immediate reaction to some of the topics that Jamie went over, as well as the NERC alert that went out last week.
Sure. Do you want to ask some questions first? Do you want me to?
Yeah, just get your initial kind of thoughts after the last session.
Well, the NERC alert is fortuitous in that a lot of people have seen this coming, but then again, there's a lot more to come. So I'm really glad that NERC is really on this in a supportive way. I've not participated deeply in NERC. I've gone to sessions and so forth, but never actually opened up to help write and help volunteer. It's kind of like the IEEE 2800 committees where you go in, you work for years on work that no one appreciates until you solve a problem, and then it looked easy. I think that the overall observation I have, if you say, is that, does anybody care about the grid? We do. We're here. But there was a very interesting article in the Financial Times last week where the question that the bankers were asking at a famous Milken soiree with famous financiers, and the question was, does anybody care about the Strait of Hormuz? And you look at the stock market, you look at what's happening with hyperscalers, and it seems to just go on and on and on. So it seems that the business models are independent of the pending disasters that we see around us. And so I've been looking at how do we participate and change the political perceptions that would allow people to participate, like what NERC is doing now, to help get momentum the other way, to get resources that we need to rebuild the grid.
Wonderful. So one question I had, is, especially in your area of work, is kind of what you're doing in ERCOT and the interconnection process there. Talk to me about the interconnection process.
Sure. We've been involved in a lot of interconnection processes, in many states. 150 processes in California, Arizona, New York, so forth. It's over the last 15 years. ERCOT's interesting in that it's kind of Wild West. It lets a lot of stuff happen. They're obligated to build to you. So it's a very pleasurable kind of development environment. But it's also an environment where I think they're taking the new problems of stability very seriously, because they've had obviously the winter storm and fluctuations in frequency and so forth. So their processes have become very stringent, and they're very aware that there's an overabundance of applications. It's impossible to go through them all. The tools that people use are inadequate. They're like 20, 30 years old in terms of tools to help planning. So they're kind of doing the best they can. It's very impressive because they're really splitting the process up. So I could talk about the process a little bit more, or what granularity would you like, do you think the audience would like to hear about? Oh, I can't hear you, Adam.
Unmute. That's classic
It
mistake.
was I was simulating your mouth, your reading your lips. So I was guessing, but go ahead.
There we go. So I'd love to hear more about the processes, but I'd also love to hear kind of in the lens of kind of this capacity waste, right? Like how do we use this process to solve? I think you had told me that like 30% of the grid is wasted in order to provide kind of an overcapacity cushion. It's kind of talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the academic study, I'm sure people here are well aware of this, and it's been studied for a long time. The way that the ISOs and everybody has managed grid power supply and balancing frequency and all that has been to basically have overcapacity. So if you have 30-40% of slop, you can really correct for a lot of mistakes. And that's not a bad thing. It just was the easiest way to do it. And given the technology at the time, it is so far it's worked pretty well. You go to Texas, where it's one of the most popular places to build for data centers, suddenly, over the last few years. You now have 180 gigawatts of people trying to apply for data centers. They can't all be built. Uh, a very, very high percentage of projects will never be built, but they have to study them anyway. So what Texas has done is, and I think they've done a really good job at it, is they've kind of stopped it down, as most people here know. They've created what they call batch process, which is a way to kind of, pull the cord on the assembly line, stop it down, and then start again. And so everybody's a little bit upset, but everybody's upset equally. So in the next process, what they're doing is they're saying, look, we're going to start from zero. They call it batch zero. And we're going to take applications again, but you have to resubmit your plans. And we can talk about this a bit later, but the big issue is that most developers and most facility operators' plans never match actual behavior. And it didn't matter when you had 30% slop in the network, but now it really is critical. It could actually take the grid down. And we can get into the famous stories of how the grid went down. So the batch process, starting out with, you must submit your applications again. You must redo your studies. ERCOT uses planning software called PSSE. A lot of people understand that. It's one of the many vendors that provide planning software. So they're asking for a resubmission of those plans, and then you must adhere to a really stringent um, set of criteria. And on the table now are two major, the way I understand this, the way our team understands this. So please, in the audience, please verify this yourselves, because things are changing, and I could be wrong. But the deadline is July 15th for resubmitting this, and you have to kind of match your plan and really show that it conforms to their new standards, NOGRR standards, which are the new stability standards that they've come up with. Now, we go into that in more detail. Before that, on or about July 10th, is an announcement where they're implementing the large load requirement. So unlike NERC studying it for quite a while in the future, is a recommendation. ERCOT's right there. They're ahead of everybody, and they've been studying this for over 6 months. They've been studying the NOGRR standards for over 2 years. It's too late to get an exemption. I think there were 230 exemption applications for balancing your load and showing the model properly, and all 230 have been rejected. So they're very, very serious about these standards, I think.
Let's dig in a little bit more on the NOGRR standards.
Sure.
Walk me through that, what needs to be done. I think maybe a question that I have and maybe other people here have, and folks definitely drop questions in the Q&A about this. I think John has a really good perspective on this stuff. is what's missing right now. Where are people going to get tripped up?
Sure. Well, let's start at the high ground. Okay. I'm not an engineer, but the news around our necks, makes us focus on a lot of things sometimes. Um, the one way to look at this is that when you look to the frequency, and balancing frequency, it's gotten a lot worse. And when the physics of the grid gets out of sync, just a very, very small amount, it causes brownouts. So it's a physics issue. It's well known. The tolerances are really small. We can go into the details if you want to hear about it. But at the high level, 50,000 foot, last February, as an example, 40 data centers went off the grid in Virginia within the same second. And that caused over a load of over 1 million houses to go off the grid. And what that meant is that people producing power would power it into the grid still, and no one was taking the power out, and it would have melted down the grid. Like just the physics of it would have melted wires and ruined transformers. I mean, it was a really big deal. It was saved by a small team of people, as I understand it. Somebody hit the red button, stopped all the coal plants on the eastern seaboard, and somebody had a lot of wisdom. There was no AI involved. It was, a couple of smart people that have seen it before, done it before, and called the question, and then saved the grid. We don't even hear about it. It's just seamless. We don't even know about it. It was fine. I don't think there was even a brownout. So the standards that came about for the last 4 years have been in the IEEE, have been called IEEE 2800. And IEEE 2800 was 250 people, 230 people, kind of like the NERC committees, getting together for years to argue about how do you deal with this problem. And the solution that they've come up with is you must have real-time measurement and real-time signals back and forth, two-way signals to sources, and you must have real-time compliance. And instead of, 5 minutes later or 15 minutes later, you might write a report. So this is a real deal. It's been thought through by a lot of people. It's now a standard in the U.S. It's been adopted by Texas specifically. Texas changed the name of IEEE 2800. They named it after their committees. There's like a resilience committee and for the R's, and there's some of the other committees, so they call it NOGRR. So it's Texas. They're going to do it their way, and they renamed it. But they've added the committees involved that are responsible for this for resiliency. They've also stated resiliency is the number one issue in Texas. It's not power supply. It's not worrying about the data centers moving to another state. It's not the money that people are willing to put in. It's all about resiliency. And they've stated this again and again and again, publicly and privately.
Great. A question from the audience, Daniel Bauer-Kemper. I'm hoping that is the way to pronounce that. His understanding is that the PSSE model requirement that you must perform a study was historically done for large electrical supplies like new power plants, new large solar farms, etc. Are there regional like ERCOT and SPP requirements for large loads like data centers?
The PSSE is, probably one of the 3 or 4 planning tools that are out there. They're all for manufacturers. I won't pump up any single manufacturer. They'll have moats around their little territories. ERCOT has determined that they must, since they have PSSE and they use PSSE, you must submit it with PSSE models. Otherwise, they wouldn't know how to deal with it. They have a uniform standard for all of ERCOT. There's no carve outs. I'm in the wrong territory. I'm in a county that doesn't have the load. There are issues you might get into being accepted by the batch process because you prove that the load works out and everybody's happy with the supply meeting the demand. But to answer the question specifically, the standards for NOGRR apply everywhere in Texas. And let me go a little bit deeper. What these standards are for are kind of euphemisms and acronyms for you must comply to voltage, frequency, real-time measurement, two-way feeding of power, give power to the network, take power from the network. It's all inverter-based resources or large loads. So it's all anybody has a battery or a solar system or a wind system uh, or a large data center of some sort, a large load must comply, and that's in the rules.
Great.
I don't know if
Daniel.
that answers it specific enough. There's no free lunch. Let's put it this way: you can't be in a county that you've dodged the bullet, right? They've made this for all of ERCOT territory.
Great. Yeah, let's dig into, you mentioned about digging a little bit more into the modeling versus reality, the impact that has, and how it's actually done in real time, yeah, as well as the next steps on how to deal with it. Can you kind of dig into that a little bit more?
Sure. Um, the historical way that it was the most profitable way to work, I think, in this area as a developer. The way that the requirements were kind of limited is that you hired you provided a PSAC study. You had to hire usually a very qualified independent engineer to do it because it's very complicated. Usually you did it anyway to double check your own internal math. Uh, you would make a model using these heuristic, Newton-driven proximate models where it's almost like doing Excel, where you try to get closer and closer and closer to taking all the input of your load and you balance it out and then you submit that as the plan. So if you have one inverter versus a battery and they're different manufacturers, they all have different specs. And the puzzle is how do you put it all together and then submit it? It sounds really good in the way that we used to work, the way that everyone used to work, is you draw it up like your line drawings on remodeling your bathroom. You'd submit it to for the permit. In this case, ERCOT would give you the interconnection permit. And then if you made any changes from there, you just didn't worry about it because you're under construction. You remember to remind yourself to send in the changes later. But generally, if you complied, it didn't matter because there was this 30% slop factor that covered the mistakes. What has changed is that the realization as more load has come in with data centers and the fragility, the unsustainability of the grid is the opposite of sustainability, is that the frequency is so erratic that it was causing brownouts. It was unmanageable. And it's because rarely do the plans meet the performance. So the complaint that is true is that everybody submits plans and the plans never match the actual behavior. So the big problem is matching plans versus behavior. The grid is doing a good job and ERCOT's doing a great job, I think, given the resources. But they're kind of fooled because all the plans are just kind of quick, get it done, good guess, not fraud, just get it done, get it out there. And then when you get operational, well, it never matches. And when it gets big enough problem, it cascades together with other people's problems, and now you have the problems that we have in the overall network.
Great. And I think there was actually a follow-up question from Daniel, I thought was a good one to address. Would a similar
Sure.
requirement have helped in the Virginia event?
I say that again, Adam, please.
Would a similar requirement have helped in the Virginia event?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So the solution that we kind of geared into with our projects is that we had to come up with real-time measurement and submission to the ERCOT plan, the NOGRR. We were worried about it because we didn't do it. We felt we'd be eliminated from the batches and from interconnection. And I think that's a real worry that everybody faces. To answer the question, Virginia would have absolutely benefited from this. And the news is that the IEEE 2800 is a national standard. It's an IEEE, it's an international standard that was worked on for about 4 years specifically to deal with this issue. So it's being adopted worldwide by most jurisdictions. The United States is a little bit different in that each ISO, each jurisdiction has to implement their own policies at their own pace. So Texas grabbed it first, and they're, I think, ahead of a lot of people. But PJM territory is right behind. So they're implementing what is called IEEE 2800. They don't have NOGRR, Texas committees. And so most of these ISOs distribution centers and utilities are implementing this right now. I think by the end of the year it'll be everywhere, or there'll be a plans announced to implement it early next year.
Wonderful. And
So
you,
yes, so it would have helped a lot. And what what PJM is doing is they're doing it right now. They're just trailing the aggressive schedule that Texas has put together.
great, amazing answer there. Kind of actually a good opportunity to hear a little bit more about what you and your team have developed, the technology that you all have developed to as an answer to this, and potentially as an answer to a lot of the other problems that we've talked about so far today.
Well, thanks. Without plugging what we're doing, in gratuitous self-aggrandizement, what we did was we were driven by because we're a small developer on our own balance sheet. We're not a fund with other people's money. We use other people's money for project finance, but we're generally a balance sheet at risk. We were worried about the whole thing collapsing and going away. So in Texas, the motivation was, what are we going to do about it? Because of our technical background, maybe some of my history in computer graphics and fiber optics and things like that from years ago, these topics aren't strange alien subjects, So what we started doing is looking at this kinds of software you'd need to do real-time measurement on site, so that you could give the feedback to either head it off at the pass, like the frequency is out of whack, so we'll use our batteries to balance it, or we'll comply with whatever standards are out there for two-way communication, and we'll gladly take the communication from headquarters or send information if it's requested in real time, so that the network can function. It's not functional at ERCOT yet. They've got great plans, so if you send all the data, I'm not sure what they do with it. They're far ahead of a lot of people, so we're not deeply involved in that. So what we did is we said, look, let's take this. It's really a controller function. It's a microgrid function, what some people would call it, because you're managing power flow. But the software and algorithms have to do with how do you manage power on site. And in this case, because of the standards, microgrids could go everywhere. You could work from the cloud. But in this case, the compliance has to be done on site because the latency times are too long to run it from the cloud. So you got to have something right on the spot because really you're measuring power flow in milliseconds. So it's gone from 15 minutes to milliseconds is the new standard. And these are all published. They've been argued about for years on who can do it and can we do it and who wants to do it and that kind of thing. So
So,
that's what we're doing right now.
so you all took a pretty, I guess, aggressive kind of stance towards this, right? Like you went out, you developed your own system for this. You didn't really wait, for it to come to you. If you're somebody who is maybe term middle management or kind of boots on the ground folks at the utility, how would you approach your management and executive team about saying, hey, we need to get ahead on some of this stuff. We need to take a more progressive look at compliance and making sure it's actually something that can drive our business forward.
Well, we've had a long debate internally. Do we keep this internal just to take advantage of it? Since we're not a fund and walking around buying distressed property, we said, look, well, let's take this off. And we talked to venture capitalists about spinning it off and looking at teams. How can it be done properly? How do you open up to everybody, not just have early adopters hoard it or sell it to the wrong people who hoard it and kill it? I think other companies will definitely show up. So the famous companies will have solutions like this. So if I were you all, I would reach out to us, reach out to you, reach out to me, reach out to the community who's making progress in this area. Try to get ahead of it to show that they're attempting to comply or comply because they're submitting models that conform. And then I believe that the controller will take the actual functionality of a controller on site. Somebody will be there, we'll be there, somebody else will be there. That will happen after people have submitted these plans. You only need the controller once you've started building, and you need the controller to get commissioning. So the scary thing is that you actually have to have, from our point of view, you have to know the answer before you start because ERCOT is not commissioning, meaning turning the lights on to a site. If you fail the commissioning and it doesn't match the plan, they're saying to everybody up front 100 times, they're not going to connect you. And if you have the banks have loaned you the money, the mortgage is due and you can't walk in the house yet. So we take it really, really seriously. The ERCOT seems to be absolutely serious about all these processes. They've been absolutely clear too. There've been 20 webinars on this stuff, by ERCOT, allowing people to comment and take lessons. So so I guess the other issue, if you're in ERCOT territory, the second or third thing I do is make sure you get in the loop with ERCOT's committees because they've published slideshows, webinars, exactly what these standards are. There have been at these meetings probably a handful of independent engineers show up and no one else does because they make the money selling their services probably. So I would get in the loop that way and get up to speed as fast as possible. I don't know, maybe there's a webinar, like another Great Innovation Hub webinar, and if it's a big enough audience, hey, how's everybody solving this problem so you're not left out hanging in the wind?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Definitely a great topic. And I think there are a lot of people who are going to be interested in this. If they aren't currently, you should probably, get interested in it. Last couple of minutes here, I want to let you kind of plug a little bit more directly what you're doing, how people can reach you, how people can come and ask questions, any contact information you want to get out there, and then any Q&A, drop in the chat, and during the next session, maybe John, you can answer it in there.
Sure. I guess the best way, I'm old school. I don't have my own QR code yet, so I got to take a lesson from Nurek and everyone to get that. I'll post that. But my direct email is John J. Cheney at enerapower.com. I'll make sure that I get it to you, Adam, and we can put it in the chat or put it wherever people want. I always answer emails, always answer phone calls. If not, I can make sure somebody does. And everybody has legitimacy when they call. So that's one way to do it. Another way is I can just kind of put together something and give it to you and kind of disseminate to everybody if that's a good way
Yeah,
without just, begging for everybody's email addresses, right?
yeah,
For
absolutely.
fear of spam, I'll become
Yeah.
a scam account.
Yeah,
So
so folks, if you do want to reach John, a couple of things. Our next networking session is in about an hour and 15 minutes at 11:45 Pacific. Also call that lunch break. So we have a couple more sessions ahead of that. That's a great time to chat with John. I'm sure you can find him in one of the networking rooms. It's also in the final panel today, which is hosted by LAR. And then John is a frequent flyer at the Grid Innovation Hub coffee chats that we do every few weeks to a month. And then, of course, if you do want to connect directly with him at the end of the session, you will get an email asking to rate the session as well as let me know who you want to connect with. Just reply back that you want to chat with John, and I'll get you all connected.
great.
Awesome. All right, everybody, we're going to take a 3-minute break, get Amit Patel out here next to talk about how they've developed their technology to automate a lot of these compliance reporting and data collection issues and standards. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Adam. Talk soon.